everyone, my name is Crull, and welcome to my personal narrative project for EDUC188F, Race, Language, and Power in Education. I will be discussing my passion for the written language in connection with my experiences working at St. Anthony's School in Oakland, California. I will also discuss how these experiences have influenced my future academic and professional endeavors. I will first begin with a brief background about my passion for the written language, which began from an early age. I played World of Warcraft for the majority of my childhood, and a lot of my friends were online. I communicated primarily through typing, so I grew very experienced with the written language from a very early age. I began to appreciate the written language for its revisory abilities. I could type out a message, reread it, and edit it a few times, and then send my polished thoughts into the world. I appreciated having this extra moment to filter my thoughts as opposed to the more on-the-spot and impromptu thinking required by spoken communication. I also appreciated the written language due to the ability for people to say the same things in multiple different ways. I especially appreciated the various acronyms and slang phrases I'd encountered from various players in the World of Warcraft universe. It helped me realize the elasticity and the craftability of the written language. And I'm sure the majority of us use a lot of slang and acronyms in our day-to-day life. You know, we may type LOL, or be right back, BRB, or oh hey, I'll be AFK away from keyboard for a sec. And I especially really loved how people could create silly representations of things and provide insight into their thought processes through the language that they used. For example, I once reflected on a conversation where I could not remember the word lasso, and consequently used the term horse noose instead. This sparked an interesting conversation about the underlying associations of this creation. One could argue that lassos are now seen as cool tools used to capture innocent animals like horses or cows and help to subvert them into a life of domesticity. Therefore, I mentally came up with the term horse noose. I could not believe how deep of an analysis I could spark based upon my construction of a new phrase to substitute for the word lasso, which I just really couldn't remember. I continued to ponder the associative capabilities of the written language throughout my childhood and adolescence. As I continued to develop my passion for the written language by pursuing an education BA at UC Berkeley, I have also been working as a program leader in the before and after school program at St. Anthony's School in Oakland, California. This line of work provides me with exposure to different languages, slang, and verbal mannerisms utilized by students in kindergarten through 8th grade. The student body at St. Anthony utilizes 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Some students speak only English, while some students speak English and Spanish, or English and Vietnamese. English and Spanish are the primary languages in the school because teachers facilitate class instructions in English, but members of the staff will communicate with each other in Spanish on a regular basis. So between student and teacher, English is a primary form of communication, but between staff members, English and Spanish are primary forms of communication. And then in contrast, Vietnamese functions as a more secondary language in the school environment because it is rarely spoken outside of the Vietnamese classes, which the school actually provides on Sundays. And given the different levels of usage among the languages, I really wanted to analyze how the children perceive their languages in their schooling environments. And I did this by listening to the organic student conversations about language and asking follow-up questions when appropriate. These questions provided me with insights into the students' perceptions of their own language abilities, in addition to their perceptions of their peers' judgments regarding their language diversity. So in other words, what do my peers think of the fact that I speak Spanish or I speak Vietnamese? For the sake of this personal narrative project, I will highlight 3 key examples of race, language, and education intersecting at St. Anthony's School. The first example is a reminder for students to use standardized English during the morning assembly. Each morning, the school body gathers in the yard for a morning assembly. During this time, the student council and the principal provide morning announcements to the school. One morning, one of the student council members read an announcement that included reminders and affirmations for the students to repeat and remember. One of the affirmations included the phrase, "I will speak in standardized English." This really surprised me because I think that this sends the message to students that standardized English is the professional language, the academic language, and it is an expectation to speak standardized English in school. And this also creates a connection. Now, this idea connects to one of our course readings, Anne Zaluta's 1987 text, How to Tame a Wild Tongue, where she mentions that Now, this idea connects to Anne Zaluta's 1987 text titled How to Tame a Wild Tongue, where she states, quote, "By the end of this century, English, and not Spanish, will be the mother tongue of most Chicanos and Latinos." This is significant because it really shows the influence that language usage has on language sustainability, and it further shows the impact on language that schools have. And this is also especially significant to St. Anthony because the majority of the student population is Latinx students. So the fact that all these Latinx students will be using English as opposed to primarily Spanish in their homes and their schooling is really significant to the prevalence and sustainability of the Latinx culture. And additionally, this example of the morning assembly even further connects to another course reading, which is Jean Hill's 1998 article titled Language, Race, and White Public Space, because she emphasizes the idea that Now, this example also connects to Jane Hill's 1998 article, Language, Race, and Public Space, because the emphasis on using standardized English in school establishes the school, St. Anthony, as a default white public space. This is especially significant because it makes the school feel less inclusive and welcoming to non-white students or multilingual students. The second example is the school's negligence to provide COVID-19 clearance forms in Vietnamese. For a handful of weeks, students had to turn in a form every day that confirmed they were not showing symptoms of COVID-19 and thus could safely attend the school. Every student had to turn in one of these clearance forms every day before they were allowed to attend school, and these forms also required a parental signature. So, these forms were obviously a major necessity and priority for every student in the school. However, the forms were only available in English or Spanish, so this was extremely isolating for the Vietnamese families to only have forms available in languages other than their native languages. This lack of consideration for the Vietnamese families especially surprised me because I have personally witnessed the school previously hiring a Vietnamese translator during a school-wide meeting on Zoom. So the school clearly has access to a Vietnamese translator and that resource, but they did not bother to hire a Vietnamese translator to prepare a COVID-19 clearance form in Vietnamese. And this really positions the Vietnamese language as an other language not deserving of inclusion within the school community. And this idea connects to Smith's 1992 article titled Research Through Imperial Eyes. In this article, Smith discusses a concept called the assumed Western ownership of the world. This phenomenon is significant to this example because it shows the dominance of Western influence and Western languages. And compared to Eastern, this phenomenon is very significant to this example because it shows the dominance of Western influence in Western languages, as Eastern languages, like Vietnamese, are overshadowed by Western languages like English and even Western European languages like Spanish. The third example is students associating Chinese as the default identity for Asian American students. When students talk about students speaking Vietnamese, they mention them speaking Chinese, even though the students have very often mentioned that their language is Vietnamese. Similarly, if students see Japanese lettering in anime, they call it Chinese. For example, we were watching an episode of Naruto during one morning in the Breakfast Club, and when one of the younger students noticed Japanese lettering appear on screen, they mentioned not being able to read the Chinese on the TV. A third instance where Chinese was considered a default Asian identity occurred when one of my kindergarten students corrected another student who referred to him as Chinese, even though the student is Vietnamese. The same Vietnamese student also had another student refer to his food as smelly or stinky. Although this is not directly associated with the Vietnamese language, this negative association of the words smelly and stinky carry very racist connotations towards Asian Vietnamese food and culture. Finally, I witnessed a group of my kindergartners playing with Legos, and one of them randomly blurted out "Ching Chang Chong," but without provocation, while playing with one of his Vietnamese classmates. Now, this immediately made me think of the Chun 2016 article titled The Meaning of Ching Chong, Language, Racism, and Response in New Media, because Chun discusses a generalization of racial identity. This is especially significant because it emphasizes the struggles that Asian Americans face in a space that is not only white dominant, but is specifically othering to them. These three examples of race, language, and education intersecting at St. Anthony's School also reflect a lot of the experience that I have heard my Education 188F classmates share about the underrepresentation of language and culture within the school system. So, both of my experiences as an Education 188F student and program leader this semester have made me think about the importance of illuminated voices and breaking the cycle of underrepresentation in schools. As I have listened to my classmates during our discussions, I have learned how much other people have felt isolated or unheard in public spaces, especially in schools. I am extremely passionate about language and the different ways that people can say phrases and express themselves. I think it's so fun to learn about the many different ways that people can essentially say the same thing. I think it's a really fun game to play, actually, to try and essentially say the same thing, but in different ways. I love language. I think it's such a beautiful and diverse, just amazing, amazing thing. And I have always wanted to find a way to dedicate my career to language and writing. However, I must admit that attending UC Berkeley helped me learn about the idea of white saviors, and I've been wanting to think of a way to dedicate my life and career to the inclusion and spread of languages without overstepping my boundaries as an individual with white privilege. My experiences in this course have therefore motivated me to create my own academic journal that specifically features writers who utilize non-standard forms of English, like Ebonics or Spanish, in their texts. I would love for the academic community to include these voices because it would help to establish that every voice belongs in academic discourse, and people do not have to adhere to a white standard or a white English standard to be valid contributors to academia and the public school system. So, going forward, I really want to take my experiences in this course forward as I go and pursue the PhD education program in the University of California, Davis, and I am really, really passionate and curious and excited to see where my research takes me as I apply my lessons that I've learned here and that I will learn at UC Davis to really making this academic journal a reality. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I have so enjoyed our experiences and our time together this semester, and I hope you have a fantastic, fantastic day. Thank you. Bye-bye.